Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us. Tonight, immigration.
The problem is that, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed. And Congress right now has not changed what I consider to be a broken immigration system. With respect to the notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case, because there are laws on the books that Congress has passed. Congress passes the law. The executive branch's job is to enforce and implement those laws, and then the judiciary has to interpret the laws.
He insisted that he lacked power to act on immigration without Congress on at least 12 occasions. But this week?
There are actions I have the legal authority to take as president, the same kinds of actions taken by Democratic and Republican presidents before me, that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just.
More fair and more just? Mr. President, your actions are so far beyond what other presidents have done. 5 million? This is not prosecutorial discretion. It is deliberate, unrestrained, irresponsible, and unprecedented defiance of the U.S. Constitution and the rule of law. As a former constitutional law professor, I don't have to remind you that Congress has exclusive authority to enact laws and that you are only one of 3 separate but equal branches of government. And you don't even have the popular sentiment behind you. Almost half of Americans disapprove of your executive action. You want to change a law? How about you get both houses of Congress to agree? And stop with the smug Tony Soprano-like threats. You're so arrogant that instead of giving the new Congress a chance to pass a fair immigration law, you just do your own thing. But I have to give you credit. Within 2 weeks of an historic political shellacking, your thuggish, illegal move has cornered Republicans. They now must act or suffer political consequences. In 2012, after you announced your Dreamers policy for young people, we saw an influx of almost 100,000 from Central America. No surprise. Historically, every action on amnesty without securing the border creates yet another surge of illegals. But most important, you skirt the issue of what your actions will do to hard-working Americans. You say our immigration system is broken and that we can't afford it anymore. Mr. President, pray tell, what exactly can we afford? You say these immigrants will not be covered by Obamacare. However, the courts make clear that we must provide medical assistance to anyone who presents himself or herself at a hospital. New York alone will now be on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars in added health care costs for the estimated 300,000 undocumented New York workers. Now, all these illegals will get a Social Security number. 4 million will now get work permits. Now, if they can't find a job, they'll be entitled to unemployment, right? And with over 47 million Americans on food stamps, we need to invite non-Americans to the table? And by the way, how will these undocumented workers prove they meet your 5-year minimum residency requirement? Can we expect to see an increase in identity crime? The creation of fraudulent documents to satisfy your 5-year requirement? Will those who have received temporary amnesty be able to vote? It would certainly be easy in states where your Justice Department has fought tooth and nail to prevent the requirement of a simple photo ID. And you say that only law-abiding, hardworking immigrants will be granted temporary amnesty. But do you even know who they are? In this most recent tidal wave of immigration, Border Patrol agents report that MS-13 gang members who admit that they've committed murder are allowed in. And now we should believe that those to whom you are granting amnesty have no criminal record, that our families are safe? You've created a precedent for future presidents to outright ignore the law, from granting waivers to changing Obamacare deadline dates, instructing federal prosecutors to not enforce certain drug laws, and telling ICE agents to not enforce the immigration laws, and to not deporting those who are both illegal and criminal. So don't be surprised when the next president, following your lead, decides to throw away entitlements, Social Security, education, civil rights laws, or God help us if she gets in, ban blue dresses in the White House. What you did was a slap in the face to every immigrant who followed the rules. I know. I personally swore in thousands of those naturalized citizens. They came here legally. They learned our language. They learned our history. They swore allegiance to this country and became proud American citizens. You have made those millions who did it the right way because of your unconstitutional actions feel like schmucks. And you try to intimidate us by quoting Scripture?
Scripture tells us that we shall not oppress a stranger, for we know the heart of a stranger. We were strangers once too.
Wouldn't you say that Scripture would apply more to your inaction as you stand silently while Christians are crucified, beheaded, and slaughtered in the Middle East? And so with this new amnesty, who should I feel more sorry for? Which is the bigger inhumanity? The people who come here illegally and are forced into the shadows by their own actions? Or those hard-working Americans who have to pay the price for your presidential overreach? This is not about the audacity of hope, Mr. President. This is about the tenacity of your lawlessness, the imbalance of your moral code, and the imposition of your political agenda. And that's my open. With me now, Virginia Congressman Randy Schwartz. Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Judge. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Your reaction to this executive action by the president?
Well, I think mine is similar to most people in Washington today, that we just believe it's just staggering arrogance on behalf of the president. You know, we really wanted to work with the president. We wanted to get a solution that would work but would comply with the rule of law. The president has thrown that out the window. And at the core of it, Judge, what the president believes is that somehow or the other you have a right to come in this country, a right that you can exercise by any means possible. We believe that coming to this country is a privilege that can be exercised only based upon the laws that the people of this country have passed. I'm just concerned about the president creating a constitutional crisis that is going to jeopardize that very rule of law that undermines our country.
So what are you going to do about it, Congressman?
Well, you know, I've heard people say that he has put people in Congress in a corner. What he's really done is put the Constitution and the American people in a corner. This isn't a game show. We don't have a 60-second response that we have to make to this. We're going to be very thoughtful, very deliberate, and we're going to use every means possible to make sure that we've rolled back as many of these actions as we can. But at the same time, Judge, it's not going to stop us from continuing to work to get real solutions that work, as opposed to just responding emotionally to what the president did.
Are you surprised that he didn't say anything about a real border on the southern part of the country? He talked about adding resources to law enforcement, whatever that means.
Well, Judge, in your opening remarks, you pointed out some very good things. One of the things that we had before our Judiciary Committee was actually the head of the union of the border agents and the ICE agents. They both testified under oath that it was the president's policies that were creating the problem on the border by doing the things that he was doing. I think he's going to create more problems on the border. We're going to have more concerns, and he's certainly not going to do anything to secure that border at all.
And you know what's interesting, Congressman? Congressman, is that the president himself admits that agents in ICE are suffering from a real morale problem, and he wants to give them bonuses like he does the IRS and the GAO and everybody else. You know, maybe if he'd let them enforce the law that they're there to enforce, they wouldn't have such a morale problem. But let's talk about the voter ID laws. In those states where there is no photo ID required, will these illegals be able to vote?
Well, I think you've got a number of things. I think, first of all, can they vote? Can they be working in elections, even if they don't ultimately come to the polls? Are they walking door to door? Are they doing things that the president might want them to do? I think all of those are big concerns, because anytime you say that we're not going to enforce a law on the book, that erodes that basic rule of law. And for the president to come down and use this argument he's used, that basically, look, if you don't change the law, I have a right to break the law. What's he going to do next? Is he going to say, I want a third term, and if Congress and the American people don't change the law, I'm going to declare martial law and just use that as a justification? I just think he's on some weak grounds here, Judge, in the whole approach he's taken.
Do you fear that the move that he's made is going to poison future negotiations? I mean, you know, the ridicule of John Boehner with, you know, I told him I'd wash his car and I'd walk his dog, and he did nothing. I mean, how are you guys going to sit down and actually work with this president?
Well, you know, it's very, very tough when you have somebody that consistently tells you you can keep your health care bill, but your health care plan, but then changes that around. Somebody we watch actually dismantling the military in the United States. But then to come back out, it's more than that, Judge. The night before he announced this, he had all Democrats over to the White House. Over and over again, he has shown that he doesn't have the credibility necessary to forge these deals. But we can't let that get in our way. We're going to continue to move forward very deliberately, way, very planned way, and hopefully exercise the parts that we can exercise to correct problems that we have without letting the president stand in the way. It's just unfortunate, Judge, that we have a president that doesn't want to bring people together, continually divides us and separates us.
Well, you've got the Senate and you've got the House, and I think that it's time for the Republicans to identify what their agenda is. And I wish you luck, Congressman Forbes. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And coming up, how the president's immigration action might take a bite out of your wallet. And vote in tonight's Insta poll. Did the president do the right thing with his executive action on immigration? And if so, for whom? Facebook or tweet me at Judge Jeanine.